First, the headlines: a peace and reconciliation agreement on the Mali crisis under the supervision of the international mediation chaired by Algeria, represented by Foreign Minister Ramtan Lamamra, was signed on Sunday here in Algiers. The city of Bijaya in eastern Algeria, the stronghold of the Somam region, has hosted the 18th edition of the Olive Oil Festival. And in Russia, thousands of people are expected to march through central Moscow to mourn veteran liberal politician Boris Nemtsov, whose killing has shaken the country's beleaguered opposition. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching Dzair News and welcome to this English News edition. First, in our top stories, a peace and reconciliation agreement under the supervision of international mediation, chaired by Algeria as a mediation leader, represented by the Foreign Affairs Minister Ramtan Lamamra, was signed on Sunday here in Algiers. The Malian parties involved in the dialogue for the settling of the crisis in the northern region of Mali have enshrined the peace accord. As a result, Mali's government and an alliance of Tuareg-led northern insurgents agreed totally cease hostilities and to ease tensions, and the UN-sponsored peace and negotiations aimed at ending decades of uprising. Siham Saadu has more.
The Malian parties involved in the dialogue for the settling of the crisis in the northern region of Mali have signed up today, Sunday, in Algiers, a peace and reconciliation agreement under the supervision of the international mediation, chaired by Algeria. As mediation leader, the Foreign Affairs Minister Ramtan Lamamra, who inaugurated the signing of the ceremony. Fruit of a long and intense negotiation, the document proposed for signing was negotiated through 5 dialogue rounds, which started from July 2014 in Algiers. It includes an agreement for a global and sustainable peace, guaranteeing a definitive solution to the crisis in northern Mali.
This is a historical day. This document, concluded in Algiers, is an agreement that opens promising prospects for a better future for all Malians. And this historical day is a step undertaken by Mali to overcome the difficulties to progress towards peace.
In addition to the representative of the Malian government, 6 political military movements took part in peace talks in Mali, namely the Arab Movement of Azawad, the Coordination for the People of Azawad, the Coalition of the Prioritic Resistance Movements and the Front, the National Movement for the Liberation of Azawad, as well as Monji Hamdi, the United Nations General Secretary representative.
This peace agreement came after considerable efforts held by Algeria. This is a historical opportunity for the national mediation to solve the Malian crisis.
The median team, of which Algeria is a mediation leader, comprised the Economic Community of West African States, African Union of the United Nations, the European Union and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, Burkina Faso, Mauritania, Niger and Chad.
The Minister Delegate in charge of Maghrebian and African Affairs, Abdelkader Messahel, delivered Saturday in Niamey, Niger, a sizable quantity of humanitarian aid, including foodstuffs and medicines, as part of a donation granted by Algeria to neighboring Niger to help the displaced people of Niger and the refugees, particularly those hailing from Nigeria, who had fled the horrendous exaction perpetrated by the Boko Haram terror group in the region. In other topical national news, disgruntled protesters against shale gas test drillings in Salah region in southern Algeria again took to the streets, with scuffles being reported with law enforcement elements in the area. Police forces under tear gas to quell the violent street protests. The situation there is reported to be much volatile. Siham Sado reports.
The protesters against shale gas drilling fueled fire in the street of Ain Salah, southern Algeria on Sunday, where an administrative district has been scalded. Houses were damaged and several women were suffocated by tear gas. The conflict returned back, scattering in several areas, shouting in the street, "No shale gas in the region." Clashes began this morning, injuring many people. Their decision is intractable. Marches will persist, and the only solution to end the conflict is stopping the project of shale gas drilling in the region. According to Dzair news reporter, the movement was quite early in the morning, and it was only after the security forces' intrusion that the protesters returned back to clashes. Many police officers sealed off streets to block an anti-fracking march in the region. Daily protests against a pilot hydraulic fracturing or a fracking project of shale gas drilling are now well into their second month. Residents in Ain Salah, the Algerian's southern deserts, have been protesting against the shale gas drilling for the past 6 weeks now. The demonstrations have spread to several towns and have provided opposition parties with a new platform at an especially precarious moment for the government as oil prices have slumped.
In the vexed education file, National Education Minister Noria Ben Ghabrit acknowledged that Algeria's schools are undergoing a dangerous phase of turmoil which the sector has not witnessed before as a result of the union's refusal to suspend their open-ended strikes. Ben Ghabrit attributed the imbalances in the basic law to the repeated reminders of the reforms introduced by successive ministers, stressing that the file will be opened soon to ensure a retrieved atmosphere of quietude and stability. In a related context, a tripartite meeting was held today here in Algiers between the Minister of National Education Noria Ben Ghabrit, the Minister of Labour and Social Security Mohamed El Ghazi, along with the UGTA Secretary General Abdelmajid Sidi Said. In a reaction, the education unions argued that meeting with the UGTA leader won't change the situation but would rather make it worse, as they put it. Usama Snoussi reports.
It seems that the Minister of National Education, Noria Ben Ghabrit's meeting today with the Minister of Labour and Social Security, Mohamed El Ghazi, in the presence of the Central Syndicate Secretary General Abdelmajid Sidi Said, will be a good opportunity for independent unions to discuss closed files. Sidi Said's intervention to heal the sector's problems and end the strike, which has lasted for more than 3 weeks, would add salt to injury and make the situation even worse, according to the union's statement that questioned the Central Syndicate's attendance to such an important meeting. Some unions found the meeting as an opportunity to shed light on some abandoned files that have been in their agenda for several years, but they settled for an open strike to push the Minister Ben Ghabrit to review the special law and some other conditions that were unjust for teachers. The tripartite meeting and depriving independent unions from attending it to represent workers is one of the main points that the unions talked about after the announcement of the meeting of the Ministers of National Education and that of Labour with the Secretary General of Central Syndicate. It seems as a good opportunity to revive these files. The education unions were the first initiator, as they said on the tongue of their telecommunications Secretary General, that Sidi Said's presence will not change anything if the Ministry of Labour doesn't play the role of the mediator between the unions and the government to find real and radical solutions for this long-standing file.
In other local news, the parliamentary seasonal session has started and outstanding files are being discussed, with on prime focus the projected constitutional amendments or the planned overhauling of the national airline sector in the hope of coming up with tangible results. Shakib Lawishi and the results.
In a sharp political polarization, the parliamentary spring session has kicked off. In its agenda, many new as well as old projects from the previous sessions will be brought on the table. One of the most important files to be dealt with is the constitutional amendments, especially that the minister in charge of relations with the parliament has affirmed the doors shall remain open, and its schedule falls within the responsibilities of the president, which means it is likely to be rescheduled anytime soon. This hypothesis was strengthened by the statements of the leader of the FLN party, Ammar Saadani, who linked the holding of the FLN conference with the legalization of the new constitutional amendments. He even went further by saying that next April is the big day to suggest these amendments in the parliament without even having resort to a referendum. Amongst the other files to be studied is the airline sector, which will dominate the discussions of the parliament members, seeing the controversy that it has stirred in the country due to the Khalifa Airlines experience and its consequences, in addition to the utter rejection of some political parties, such as Labour one. Moreover, the project of advertisement and polls law will have its share in the discussion after it had been postponed for so many years. According to the Minister of Communication, some of the law's articles will create a controversy at both arenas, the political and the media one.
The eastern city of Bijaya, the stronghold of the Somam region, hosted the 18th edition of the Olive Oil Festival. The event witnessed the participation of numerous farmers from the four corners of the country. The fair is devoted to showcasing oil-based products. However, edible oil producers said that in order to hike the overall oil output, the government should consider funding and supporting them. Mustafa Azzouk and the details.
The Association for Development Olives Industry organized in the eastern province of Bijaya the 18th edition of Olive Festival. The fair saw a wide participation of farmers from every corner of the country.
168 farmers from 10 provinces took part in this event. The olive-based soap I'm selling protects the skin. In addition, it is eco-friendly.
Farmers who partook in the event expressed their dissatisfaction regarding several pending issues, notably the lack of equipment needed for their daily work, in addition to not being enrolled in the Social Security.
We called on the relevant authorities to improve our working conditions. The farmer must be paid for the work he does.
The harvest season ended. We are hoping these crops will get us as much money to support ourselves.
To increase oil production, the government should swiftly act and undertake new policies to help and financially support olive producers, as well as taking measures to modernize the agriculture sector.
To the Middle East now, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi met Saudi King Salman bin Abdulaziz Sunday to discuss and promote bilateral ties between both countries, state media reported. The official visit is al-Sisi's first since King Salman acceded to the throne after the death of King Abdullah. In addition to congratulating King Salman, al-Sisi aims to discuss the situation in Yemen and ongoing threats in the Middle East. Karim Fazakri reports.
Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi met Saudi King Salman bin Abdulaziz Sunday to discuss and promote bilateral ties between both countries. King Salman greeted al-Sisi at Riyadh's airport upon his arrival Sunday afternoon. The Egyptian president was last in Saudi Arabia in January following the death of his close ally King Abdullah. Sisi aims to discuss the situation in Yemen and ongoing threats in the Middle East. The visit comes ahead of the economic summit in March to encourage businesses to invest in the Egyptian economy. The relationship between Egypt and Saudi Arabia and Egypt and its brothers in the Gulf has been strong and stable for years, said Sisi. During the interview, Sisi reinforced the need for a joint Arab force, not for attacking, but for defending the security of our countries. He also clarified that his presence in Saudi Arabia at the same time with the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's visit to the kingdom is a mere coincidence. Taha Sayyid Taha, former deputy to the head of the military jurisdiction, said that Saudi Arabia has always been the first to calm the situation between Egypt and Qatar. He believes that the meeting may include attempts to shed light on the key points in the relationship between both countries, Egypt and Qatar. Since the ouster of former President Mohammed Morsi in July 2013, Saudi Arabia has been a strong backer of Egypt, both financially and morally. The Gulf Kingdom, a longtime critic of the Muslim Brotherhood, formally declared the Brotherhood a terrorist organization in March 2014. Under Abdullah, Saudi Arabia gave billions of dollars in aid to boost Sisi's government. The kingdom is also a key organizer of the investment conference scheduled later this month.
Still with Egypt, an Egyptian court labeling Hamas as a terrorist group sparked outrage and controversy. The ruling prompted thousands of Palestinians in the Gaza Strip to stage protest movements against the decision, calling it as unfair. Mustafa Azzouk has more.
Thousands marched in the Gaza Strip against an Egyptian court's decision to declare Hamas a terrorist organization, just weeks after the Palestinian group's armed wing was given the same designation. A judicial source told the media that the court issued a verdict on Saturday, a ruling seen as in keeping with the systematic crackdown on Islamist groups by Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. Palestinians throughout refugee camps and cities in Gaza staged protest movements against the decision. A Hamas spokesman in Gaza City denounced the ruling as a desperate attempt to exploit Egypt's crisis. whereas independent Palestinian politicians labeled the verdict as a very unwise decision that carries political complications, while adding that Hamas is part of the Palestinian National Unity movement and the decision is not useful. Saturday's ruling comes just days after Egypt adopted a new anti-terrorism law allowing the authorities to close the premises of any declared terrorist organization and to freeze its assets as well as those of its members. The relationship between Egypt's authorities and Hamas has soured since the overthrow of the Muslim Brotherhood's Mohamed Morsi as president back in July 2013.
In other world news, the Egyptian security forces have killed 28 Takfiri terrorists and arrested 16 others following large-scale operations in North Sinai. According to Egyptian sources on Sunday, the country's army launched ground and aerial offensives on Takfiri extremist positions in the south of Sheikh Zuyed and Rafah towns in Sinai, destroying several terrorist bases in the region. Last week, the Egyptian aerial attacks on the violence-stricken region left 40 Takfiri extremists dead and 14 others injured. Concerning the Syria situation, Syria's Foreign Minister Walid al-Muallim has agreed with the visiting UN envoy to Syria, Staffan de Mistura, on sending a UN mission to the country's embattled northern city of Aleppo. Karim Fasakri has more.
UN envoy Staffan de Mistura has had talks in the Syrian capital to try to finalize a deal to freeze fighting in the war-ravaged northern city of Aleppo. De Mistura met Foreign Minister Walid Muallim and agreed to send a delegation from his Damascus office to Aleppo on a fact-finding mission, state news agency Sana said, without giving a date. De Mistura's visit started as the army and pro-government fighters regained territory in southern Syria from forces opposed to President Bashar al-Assad. The Swedish-Italian diplomat hopes to set in a mission as soon as possible. His project to halt fighting in Aleppo for 6 weeks, said a member of his delegation who declined to be identified. De Mistura has met government officials and opposition chiefs in recent weeks to promote his plan for a temporary truce in Aleppo in order to move aid into the northern city. One Syria's commercial hub, Aleppo, has been devastated by fighting that began in mid-2012, and the city is now split between loyalist forces and rebels. De Mistura said last week that the government had shown a willingness to suspend aerial bombardment of Aleppo for 6 weeks to allow for humanitarian ceasefire. Under the plan, rebels would be asked to suspend rocket and mortar fire there during the freeze. De Mistura incurred the wrath of the opposition earlier in February by describing Assad as part of the solution to Syria's conflict. About 220,000 people have been killed in Syria since the conflict began in March 2011, with anti-government protests that spiraled into a multi-sided civil war drawing foreign jihadists.
In the latest on Russia, thousands of people are expected to march through central Moscow to mourn veteran liberal politician Boris Nemtsov, whose killing has shaken Russia's beleaguered opposition. The morning march could serve to energize the opposition, or it could prove to be a brief outpouring of emotions that once again will dissipate. Shekib Lawishi and the details.
Crowds of people are gathering in central Moscow to honor opposition politician Boris Nemtsov, who was shot several times just before midnight Friday, while he walked across the Bolshoi Moskvoretsky Bridge leading from the Red Square, allegedly in the company of Ukrainian model Anna Duritskaya. The slain politician was one of the organizers of the rally and called on people in an interview given just hours before he was shot. Thousands of people have laid flowers at the scene of the murder. His supporters will now be marching to mourn his death. President Vladimir Putin condemned Mr. Nemtsov's murder as vile and cynical and vowed to find the killers. Mr. Nemtsov's allies call it a political killing linked to his opposition to Mr. Putin and the Ukraine conflict. Opposition supporters are meeting at a point not far from the Kremlin, from where they will march to the spot on Great Morovetsky Bridge, where Mr. Nemtsov was killed. Mr. Nemtsov's friends are certain he died for daring to speak out against corruption, against Mr. Putin's increasingly authoritarian rule, and against the conflict in Ukraine that Russia denies any role in. Boris Nemtsov called it President Putin's mad, aggressive war. Russia has become a country where critics are labeled traitors, and now one of the sharpest voices of dissent has been silenced.
In environmental-related matters, global warming stationary trend, which was reported by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change 2 years ago, is set to end as the cooler Pacific Ocean, which provided a false pause, warms up again, researchers have discovered. Usama Snoussi illustrates more.
Global warming seems to have paused since the turn of the millennium. But climatologists believe the slowdown is not a reason for celebration. The Pacific Ocean is cooling, which could be offsetting some of the warming caused by the release of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, researchers believe. El Niño cycles in the Pacific Ocean warmed the water, and the last of these cycles took place between 1997 and 1998. Since that time, the world's largest ocean has exhibited a cool phase. However, these conditions will not last, and once the cycle reverses its trend, global warming will once again start to heat the planet, researchers note. Some critics of the idea of man-made global warming insist the reduction in global warming seen in the last 15 years shows human activities are having minimal effect on climate change. On February 26, Senator Jim Inhofe of Oklahoma, chairman of the Senate's Environment and Public Works Committee, brought a snowball into the Senate chambers in order to illustrate that global warming is not taking place. The largest ocean on the globe cycles through temperature changes over a period of 16 to 20 years. During this time, waters experienced El Niño, as well as cold La Niña periods, each lasting between 3 to 7 years. The North Atlantic and North Pacific Oceans appear to be drivers of substantial natural internal climate variability on timescales of decades, Mann said. Climate models were averaged in an effort to eliminate random variability present in the simulations, which is also seen in the real world. Researchers can then subtract the effects of human activity on the environment, as well as dramatic natural events, such as the eruption of volcanoes. Doing so provides researchers with a model showing the effect of ocean cycles on global temperatures. Investigation of the role of Pacific cooling on the global warming pause was published in the journal Science.
That was Karim Fazdakri reporting. And back to Algeria now. For its National Day, the old district of the Kasbah in Upper Algiers has attracted many craftsmen who got together to celebrate the event and to demonstrate their well-made handicraft items and also promote tourism in the Kasbah itself so as to make it recover its past glory. Shakib Lawishi.
A lot of craftsmen came from many different parts of the country to celebrate the National Day of Al-Kasbah on the 23rd of February. We are here today to celebrate the National Day of Al-Kasbah, and we represent handicraft, especially traditional ornaments, which are part of the national heritage of Al-Kasbah. The celebration of this event is a seasonal tradition in which the organizers endeavor to give back the Kasbah its past gleam after it faded with time due to negligence. It's an important day for us. Back in time, the celebration of this day was only limited to the city of Al-Kasbah, so we have decided to include the craftsman, who plays an important part in the city's heritage, as he is considered as a symbol. For this reason, we have this exposition today where many craftsmen coming from all over the country to display their work in order to encourage handicrafts and promote tourism in the city of Al-Kasbah. This is all what remains of the old Kasbah, a city that has gone through time and remained forgotten, despite its unique features such as old houses, narrow streets, and its dilapidated walls that tell too much about its past.
The end of our English news edition brought to you live from Dzair News channel. Thank you so much for tuning in our way. Bye-bye.